Over the past 8 months, Rise Up for Abortion Rights waged sustained, militant, in-the-street struggle, putting their bodies on the line, first to prevent and then to protest the Supreme Court's outlawing of abortion. The Revcoms, especially Sunsara Taylor, played a significant role in that struggle.
This ruling was illegitimate. It must not be accepted, and people in this country need to stand up now, fill these streets, and demand that the U.S. government at the federal level restore nationwide legal abortion.
And Bob Avakian wrote a number of critical articles during that period that provided important insight and valuable leadership. Unfortunately, too many groups and individuals that should have known better stood aside from that struggle. But then, the day after the decision, a number of groups launched attacks on Rise Up, as well as the Revcoms, Sunsara Taylor and Bob Avakian. The sharpest edge of the attack, which was then picked up and amplified by a number of news platforms across the political spectrum, was that the Revcoms and BA were supposedly running a cult, and that Rise Up was supposedly being used in a pyramid scheme. These lies have been refuted by Rise Up and the Revcoms and on this show. But ask yourself, why are they attacking by trying to stigmatize BA, using the scare word cult instead of honestly taking on his arguments? I mean, think about it. If you found out that someone said they actually had a way out of this mess.
Let's get down to basics. We need a revolution. Anything else in a final analysis is bullshit.
That they had backed it up with real-world research and scientific analysis that was both tight and very wide-ranging and expansive. Wouldn't you want to find out about it? If it turned out he had something powerful to say, wouldn't you want to tell everybody about it? And if people were walking around in a world of hurt and saw no way out of it, except to scratch and claw against each other, or maybe at best, fight for some minor improvements here and there that wouldn't even begin to correctly identify, let alone deal with the problem, wouldn't you want to shake them awake and say, hey, stop that stuff. There's a leader here with a way out. And if somebody thought that way out was wrong or false, wouldn't you think they'd try to make a reasoned argument against it? That's because if you're somebody who's working on the problem of how we get out of this for real, or if you're somebody who's working with all your heart to fight the power and make things better, but you're not sure about revolution, you're not sure what the heart of the problem is, and you want to raise questions and differences, then wouldn't you want to hear that content debated? Wouldn't you want to get out of slanders and gossip and anonymous sources and get into the substance of things? Wouldn't you want to hear this debated in a way in which both sides brought their best arguments so you and others could figure out what was actually true? This week we ran an interview on Revcom with Bob Avakian from a few years back, a great piece from a larger piece called What Humanity Needs, Revolution in the New Communism. And part of this interview, the part that we've excerpted, goes into how we should have those debates over the way forward. What it means to approach that with a scientific method and with largeness of mind and generosity of spirit, to quote BA. And how do you do that in a way that is up here about what is true and what is not true, what is going to get people free and what is not, and not down there with all kinds of accusations that just degrade and demoralize everyone and get you further away from the truth. Bob Avakian also talks in this interview about what happens when people don't do that, including how the state and the political police can fish around there and goad people into doing real foul stuff to each other. Not only does that lead away from the kind of debate that can deepen understanding, That's had a tremendous cost to the people over the years, and we just can't afford to let them play the same foul stuff against us again. The people that you've heard on the show this past weekend today, or the many more statements of support and defense that you can read at RevCom from all different political perspectives, know that there's someone worth defending here, and someone worth listening to and seriously grappling with. Some of these people remember, or they've studied, the bitter experience of the 1960s, when people paid in blood for lessons on how not to conduct struggle. They're not doing this because they're into idol worship, but because they seriously want to change this world. And they know this is a voice that needs to be heard and defended from unprincipled attack and, yes, from repression. And there are also some people and forces who are mainly saying that this kind of anti-communism and slander and divisiveness should have no place in the movement or in social discourse more generally. And that stand is also righteous and very important these days. But if some people and social forces are trying so hard to keep people from even getting into this, and if instead of principled debate, they're making charges that are really dangerous, and it seems like inviting the authorities in to come mess with this, you got to ask yourself, why? And more than that, you got to tell them no. Here I'm going to read from the interview itself. Bob Avakian says, people have to fight to make the focus of things. What is the way we're going to actually understand the world and change the world? There's also a fight to have the standard be that other stuff, that tabloidism, that low-life gossiping, slander, and rumor mongering, the personal backbiting, and the rest of that. We don't want that. That doesn't go here. We're about something serious here. We're about trying to make a new world, and that other stuff is part of the old world we need to get rid of. If you have a criticism of somebody, let's raise it up to the level of things that really matter. He goes on to say, it will not get things onto the level where they need to be, but will actually drag them down and away from what needs to be focused on. If, when an individual or group forthrightly puts forward its views and aims, instead of responding to the substance of this, it is answered by accusing them of arrogance for putting this forward, or trying to dismiss them as a cult, or demanding, who are you to say that you know what the problem is and what should be done? Instead, the focus needs to be on, what does this person or group stand for? What does that other person or group stand for? And which one, if either of them, really is in correspondence with reality and with the interests of humanity, and which is not? Or which ones go partway and then back, and which ones can actually break through and go where we need to go? Look, right now we are living in a deathbound, what they call a moribund society. This disease of capitalism-imperialism has reached a potentially terminal stage. There may not be much time we have left. And here you have these opportunists and worse, who are like totally unscientific faith healers in the middle of a deadly epidemic, peddling you stuff to make you feel better while the clock ticks down. Maybe they're telling you how you should rename your symptoms to think more positively about what's actually in the process of killing you, or how you should get together in support groups where people may be very acutely suffering from this or that symptom of the underlying disease, but nobody really knows what causes it or what cures it or how to find that out. So all you can do is make each other feel better while the clock ticks down and you try to block that out of your mind, instead of looking into and confronting the radical diagnosis and the life-saving, if risky, surgery you need that has a chance of curing this condition. So naturally, the last thing these faith-healing charlatans would want is debate about what is the problem and what is the solution. The last thing they want is a debate over what is the scientific method and approach, and how does it apply to understanding and transforming society. That diagnosis and the prescription for what to do is found not only in the entire body of work of Bob Avakian, it's found right now very in particular in his talk, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. Because the fact is that with this disease, within the very acuteness of it right now, lies the possibility of the cure of revolution. Again, something terrible or something truly emancipating? Which will it be? This fight over leadership and the need to defend that leadership. This fight over principle and the need to uphold principle. This fight over standards and the need to insist on these standards. These are all parts of a larger fight. The fight to not only make revolution in this time, but to get beyond this society with the horrific and needless conditions it subjects people to, and the putrid values it gives rise to, and yes, the way it suppresses and works against people knowing the truth. So I'll end this with how B.A. ends this section of the interview. Quote, "We are going to struggle in the culture at large to tell people, let's get out of that cesspool and let's get up here into the realm of the future of humanity. And over that, yes, let's have lots of very sharp but principled struggle about the substance of what humanity's up against and the substance of what we need to do about it."